WH Smith is closing high street stores. The Body Shop is in administration. Wilko is shutting all 400 locations, and 12,500 jobs will be gone in weeks. Across Britain, some of the biggest retail chains you grew up with are fighting to survive the months ahead. Footfall is down nearly 11%. Real household income has turned negative. And the names that once defined how this country shopped are discovering that heritage and scale may no longer be enough. This is not a story about 12 struggling businesses. It is a story about why Britain stopped shopping the way it used to. Inflation may have cooled, but the pressure on household budgets remains. In 2026, the Consumer Prices Index stands at 2.8%, while the Retail Prices Index is slightly higher at 3%. The Bank of England's base rate holds at 3.75%, well above pre-pandemic levels. For many families, real disposable income has slipped by 0.8% over the past year, and the savings ratio has dropped to 9.5%. Even with modest wage growth, the cost of living continues to outpace earnings. Council tax bills are up 4.9%, pushing the average annual payment for a Band D property to nearly £2,400. Food prices have risen by 3.1% year on year, and petrol now costs over 158 pence per litre. These increases land hardest on essential spending, leaving less room for anything outside the basics. The squeeze is not just a matter of statistics. Across the country, households are making difficult choices, paring back on discretionary purchases, delaying home improvements, and seeking out cheaper alternatives wherever possible. The result is visible on the high street. Retail footfall has dropped 10.7% compared to last year, a decline that has persisted month after month. This is not a blip caused by bad weather or a single economic shock, but the outcome of sustained financial strain. As more of the weekly budget goes to taxes, groceries, and transport, there is less left for fashion, entertainment, or impulse buys. The question facing every retailer is the same. If households are buying less, who can still attract their share of spending? The answer will shape not just which chains survive, but what the high street itself looks like in the years ahead. WH Smith once seemed stitched into the fabric of daily British life. For generations, it was the place to buy a morning paper, a paperback for the train, or school supplies before term began. But the chain's survival now depends less on nostalgia and more on where it operates and what it sells. Today, about 55% of WH Smith's revenue comes from travel concessions in airports and railway stations, while 45% still comes from high street stores. The difference is stark. High street sales have fallen 12% since 2020, reflecting the sharp drop in town centre footfall and the steady shift of news, books, and magazines to digital. By contrast, travel locations, though not immune to falling passenger numbers, and with footfall down 6%, still benefit from a captive audience and lower concession rents, often 30 to 40% less per square metre than on the high street. To stay relevant, WH Smith has pivoted its product mix. Newspapers and novels now share shelf space with snacks, drinks, and travel essentials. The chain is closing 12 more high street stores in 2026, a sign that legacy alone cannot anchor a retailer in a world where convenience and adaptability matter more than tradition. The Body Shop once stood apart as a pioneer of ethical beauty, built on the promise that what you put on your skin could be both effective and principled. Its stores, filled with cruelty-free products and fair trade stories, became a fixture on British high streets, a symbol of values-driven retail long before the term was fashionable. But by early 2024, the brand entered administration. 75 of its 525 UK stores are set to close by early 2026. The heart of the problem lies not in location, but in lost distinction. As supermarkets, discounters, and influencer-led lines rushed into the ethical beauty space, the Body Shop's once unique position blurred. Lower-cost ingredient reformulations, designed to offset rising costs, left loyal customers questioning quality. Meanwhile, rivals like Superdrug and Boots gained ground, and online native brands captured the attention of younger shoppers seeking clean beauty with speed and transparency. In a market where trust can be eroded by a single product change and price comparison is only a tap away, the Body Shop's ethical halo no longer guarantees loyalty. The story now is less about closing stores and more about a brand struggling to defend its identity in a world where values are easy to market, but much harder to prove. New Look's story is not just about fashion taste, but about timing. In a world where online trend cycles move at breakneck speed, New Look's supply chain is stuck in a slower lane. It takes 12 to 16 weeks for new designs to reach the shop floor, while fast fashion rivals like Shein and Boohoo can react in just 2 to 4 weeks. This delay turns every season into a gamble, as styles that looked promising months before may already be fading by the time they arrive. The result is excess stockpiling. New Look's inventory to sales ratio stands at 1.4, well above the level seen at faster competitors. To clear unsold items, the chain has leaned heavily on markdowns, with clearance discounts averaging 55%. While this keeps stock moving, it comes at a steep cost. Gross margins have slipped from 41% to 38%, and like-for-like sales are down 2% year-on-year. Heavy discounting may drive short-term sales, but it erodes profitability and undermines the value of the brand. In this environment, restructuring leases becomes a defensive move, an effort to reduce fixed costs and buy time, rather than a path to renewed growth. The core problem remains. When trends shift overnight and shoppers expect instant gratification, a slow supply chain can be fatal, no matter how familiar the name above the door. River Island sits in a position that looks strong on paper, but is exposed on all sides. With estimated annual turnover of £1.2 billion, it remains one of the largest privately owned fashion chains on the UK high street. Yet the numbers tell a story of mounting risk. Since 2019, footfall at River Island stores has declined by 5% year-on-year, a steady erosion that cannot be explained by a single poor trading season or a brief change in fashion. The chain's price point, wedged between value players like Primark and upmarket brands such as Rice or M&S, has become a liability. In a market where shoppers are either chasing the lowest price or looking for something aspirational, sitting in the middle can be a dangerous place. River Island is neither the cheapest nor the most desirable, and that leaves it vulnerable as budgets tighten and tastes polarize. Private ownership, once a shield, now intensifies the pressure to generate quick returns. High leverage and the demands of private equity have made suppliers nervous. In the first quarter of 2026, major credit insurers reduced their coverage for River Island, a move that signals growing doubts about the chain's ability to meet its obligations. For suppliers, this means less willingness to offer goods on credit and a greater risk of stock shortages if cash flow falters. The real threat is not a sudden collapse, but a slow loss of relevance, a drift that leaves the brand exposed to both ends of the market and increasingly isolated from the fastest-growing channels. In this environment, even a well-known name can find itself struggling to maintain the confidence of suppliers, landlords, and customers alike. HMV's fortunes have always been tied to the way people consume music, films, and games. In the era before streaming, its stores were a destination. Rows of CDs, DVDs, and games drew crowds on release day, and a new chart topper could fill the aisles. That model has been hollowed out by digital substitution. Today, HMV's total sales stand at £170 million, but the picture beneath the headline is stark. Vinyl records have seen a surprising resurgence, with sales up 30% year-on-year, driven by collectors and enthusiasts seeking something tangible in a digital world. Yet this revival is a narrow slice. CD and DVD sales have plunged 70%, and physical video game sales are down 15% in 2025 alone. To offset the collapse in mass demand, HMV has turned to in-store events. Album signings, film nights, and gaming tournaments now generate about 10% of revenue. 7 stores have closed since 2023, and 38 more have been resized into smaller, experience-led formats. These changes are less a sign of renewal than of reduced ambition, a retreat from the broad appeal of the past to a niche that prizes community and collectability. In this environment, survival depends not on scale, but on the ability to create moments and value that digital channels cannot replicate. The high street's next challenges will be shaped by categories where demand is tied to household confidence and the willingness to invest in the home. Flooring is a decision few households make lightly. For most people, replacing carpets or investing in new flooring comes only after moving home, remortgaging, or feeling secure enough to commit to a major purchase. In 2024, Carpetright entered a company voluntary arrangement, closing 30 of its 350 UK stores and cutting 600 jobs. This move was not simply about cutting costs, it was a direct response to shrinking demand. House prices in the first quarter of 2026 have risen just 1% year-on-year, a sharp slowdown from previous years. At the same time, mortgage approvals have dropped 8% compared to last year, leaving fewer families moving or upgrading their homes. Google search interest for carpet fitting quotes is down 20% from 2022 to 2025, a clear signal that many are postponing renovation plans. For a retailer like Carpetright, this environment means waiting for confidence to return. The chain's recent restructuring is an attempt to survive a slower Britain, where big-ticket home improvements are delayed, not abandoned. The story here is less about price and more about timing, when the urge to renovate is held back by wider uncertainty. Homebase once thrived on the British appetite for do-it-yourself projects, a tradition woven into the fabric of home ownership. In the wake of the pandemic, demand for tools, paint, and garden supplies soared, but that wave has long since receded. By 2025, Homebase's sales sat 12% below their pandemic peak. The customer base is split, about 30% trade professionals and 70% do-it-yourselfers, but both groups are now more cautious. For many households, even minor repairs or upgrades are postponed, as mortgage payments and energy bills claim a growing share of income. The cost squeeze is two-sided. Raw materials like timber and steel have climbed 15% year-on-year, shrinking the margin on every sale. The company's response is pragmatic, not optimistic. 20 stores are set to close, and lease negotiations for another 30 aim to cut the rent-to-sales ratio from 12% to 9%. This is less a bold strategy than a necessary retreat, a way to survive when footfall softens and every percentage point matters. With less room for error, Homebase cannot count on a quick rebound in discretionary spending. Even in the world of home improvement, the decision to spend can be deferred, and operational flexibility becomes the only real defense. The pressures facing Homebase show how quickly even practical, needs-based retail can become vulnerable when the economic tide turns. Superdry was once shorthand for youthful energy and streetwise style, its logo stitched across jackets and sweatshirts on every British high street. Today, the brand finds itself caught between past success and present uncertainty. Founder Julian Dunkerton's latest turnaround plan leans heavily on licensing deals in South Asia and the US. While closer to home, the numbers tell a more sobering story. Sales fell 4% year-on-year in the latest financial results, and the company now holds inventory worth 1.6 times its annual sales. This is a clear sign that what's in the warehouse is not what shoppers want. To clear the backlog, average markdowns have reached 45%, eroding margins and sending a message to customers that full price is rarely worth paying. The deeper problem is not just overstock, but a fading sense of relevance. Superdry's brand index score among 18 to 34-year-olds has slipped by 0.8 points since 2023, a subtle but telling measure of audience drift. For a label built on youth appeal, this erosion cuts to the core. Younger shoppers now discover fashion through TikTok trends and influencer drops, not by browsing rails in store. The familiar logo, once a badge of belonging, risks becoming background noise in a market where novelty and speed matter more than heritage. In this environment, even a credible turnaround plan can look like evidence that the old model no longer fits. Growing piles of unsold stock reflect a mismatch between what Superdry offers and what its target audience is actually buying. The question is no longer just about fixing operations, but about whether a brand can renew its meaning for a new generation. Claire's has long relied on the art of the casual stop. With around 200 UK stores, many tucked into shopping centre car parks, its success was built on impulse, shoppers wandering in for a quick accessory or a spontaneous treat. But the nature of browsing has changed. Gen Z, once a steady stream through these doors, now scrolls through Shein and Temu instead. The latest data shows an 8% year-on-year drop in footfall at typical Claire's sites between 2022 and 2025. The chain's core business, earrings, hair clips, and novelty gifts, depends on customers who are not planning their purchase ahead of time. When that traffic dries up, merchandise alone cannot keep the tills ringing. Yet one part of the business is growing. Piercing services are up 3% year-on-year, carving out a narrow lane of resilience. For Claire's, the future may rest less on what is in the window and more on what cannot be delivered in a parcel. The next battle on the high street shifts from impulse to value. Iceland built its reputation on affordable frozen food and the promise of value for families watching every pound. But in 2025, even a 2% rise in turnover could not protect the chain from mounting pressure beneath the surface. Gross margins slipped from 12% to 9%, a direct result of rising energy bills and a 6% increase in logistics costs per store. These expenses hit especially hard in smaller format shops, where every delivery and every kilowatt matters more. Unlike the relentless efficiency of Aldi and Lidl, Iceland's model leaves less room to squeeze out savings. By the second quarter of 2026, like-for-like sales trailed those discounters by 3%, despite a focus on low prices. Service charge disputes with landlords are becoming more frequent, as both sides try to pass on their own rising costs. The struggle for Iceland is not just about holding on to value, but about surviving, when the cost of delivering it keeps climbing. Wilko's collapse in 2026 marked a turning point for the British High Street. In early August, the company filed notice of intention to appoint administrators. Within weeks, phased closures began, and by the 8th of October, more than 400 stores had shut their doors. For nearly a century, Wilko had been a fixture in towns across the country, offering affordable household goods and steady work. Its disappearance left 12,500 staff without jobs. For many, Wilko was more than just employment. It was a cornerstone of daily life, especially in places where retail choices had already dwindled. The range acquired the Wilko brand and website, but the familiar red and white storefronts vanished, leaving behind empty units and a sense of loss. The impact extended well beyond Wilko's own workforce. In many town centres, Wilko had stepped into the void left by department stores like Debenhams and House of Fraser. Now its closure added to the growing list of vacant anchor units. In 2025, shopping centres anchored by these chains saw footfall drop by 9%, a decline that only deepened as Wilko stores closed. For nearby traders, the consequences were immediate. Fewer shoppers meant lower sales, and the risk of further closures grew. Local employment suffered not only from the loss of retail jobs, but also from the knock-on effects on cleaning staff, delivery drivers, and suppliers who depended on steady business. The wider community felt the absence in subtle but telling ways. Bus ridership on town centre routes declined as shopping trips became less frequent. Council budgets shrank, hit by falling business rates and reduced car park income. The sense of a lively, connected high street faded, replaced by shuttered windows and uncertainty about what would fill the gaps. For many, Wilko's closure signaled more than the loss of a store. It marked the erosion of local identity and everyday convenience. Councils and developers responded with mixed-use plans, converting empty retail into housing, co-working spaces, and cultural venues. Yet these projects often take 18 to 24 months, leaving vacant units as visible reminders of the high street's fragility. Wilko's story reveals the pressures shaping retail survival today. Adaptability, omni-channel service, disciplined costs, and speed now matter more than size or history. Chains that endure offer smaller, experience-led formats and blend online with in-store. The high street is being reshaped by the choices people make with every purchase, every visit. The question is shifting from which brands will survive to what kind of high street will remain. As change unfolds, one closed unit at a time. Today, brand loyalty and sheer scale offer no protection from shifting consumer priorities or relentless cost pressures. As physical retail faces its sharpest test in decades, what disappears from our high streets signals not just the fate of individual chains, but a society recalibrating how and where it spends. The question now is, which retailers can truly adapt? And what will your town centre look like next year? Share your thoughts below.